It was so uncool to be a sober 24-year-old.
The goal was to go out and drink. It was the activity was drinking.
I just wanted to fit in. And at the time, what was fitting in meant drinking and keeping up with people.
I've definitely had some really horrible things happen, but I still didn't call it.
I knew that I needed help, but I didn't know what that meant.
What I'm finding amazing is that you called it so young.
By the last 18 months of my drinking, I was hospitalized twice for alcohol poisoning. I didn't make a promise that this was going to be the rest of my life because that just sounded too scary. What is forever anyway? There's got to be something else.
Welcome back to the Upward Spiral podcast, where we celebrate the surprising joys and profound impact of drinking less. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and today we are going to deep dive into the real talk of sobriety with a woman who has been living booze-free for 17 years. I am going to try and not fangirl, which is going to be really hard because I've been following Laura and Zero Proof Nation for a while now, and I'm just in awe of everything that she does, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her today. So Laura Silverman, for those that don't know, and you should know, is the founder of Zero Proof Nation, a global hub for non-alcoholic beverage movement, and she's also a beacon of authenticity for anyone in the sober community. She's going to hopefully share with us her unfiltered journey, the highs, the lows, the in-between, shed some light on how sobriety intersects with mental health and neurodiversity. So if you're like Laura and it's the evening, grab yourself an amazing non-alc drink. If you're like me and it's the morning, grab a cup of tea and settle in because this is going to be a great one. Good evening/morning, Laura.
Good evening/morning, or coffee. If you're into coffee, you can do that too. Oh my gosh, I am so honored to be here, Michelle. And I just about teared up with that intro. I mean, thank you. Thank you so much. And hello to all of you amazing listeners. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Honestly, and thank you for staying up late for me. So I know it's 8:30
yeah, it is kind of, when you get sober and then you're also in your early 40s, you're like, wow, 8:30 feels late to be on the podcast.
Totally.
So, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm not going to bed anytime soon. Don't worry.
Okay, 8:30 always feels late. I know I've got friends who are like, let's do dinner at 8:30.
That's late.
No. If it's not
for whatever reason, 8:30 feels later than like 10 p.m. Not for dinner, but just like if I'm up at 10 watching something, it just feels like I'm, in that evening mode. But for whatever reason, 8:30 just sounds late. I don't know.
I know. Remember the days where you used to get ready? I used to get ready when at like 10 p.m. I would start getting ready to go out.
That was college for me. We would leave at 11 p.m. Nowadays, I hope that I'm in bed at 11,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not even sad. I don't even miss it.
Oh, no, I don't miss it at all. I like sleeping a lot, and I like not waking up hungover. So that's a big win.
For sure. I'm definitely enjoying this era of life. So, you know what? Let's get into your origin story.
Superhero. Yes, my origin story. So you touched on some of the things already that kind of, knowing what I know now, would be warning signs or red flags that maybe alcohol wouldn't mix well with me. But it was a solution until it wasn't. It was a solution for my problems until it turned into the bigger problem. And that solution was really drinking to self-medicate over some mental health disorders that hadn't been diagnosed yet. I had obsessive compulsive disorder, clinical depression, panic disorder. I had also been bullied for numerous years in my upbringing. So I grew up overseas. My father's a retired U.S. diplomat, and I spent the bulk of my life, my childhood, in Latin America and also in the Middle East. And it was just hard being new all the time and moving every 4 years. By the time I would make solid friends, it was time to leave them again. And when I was younger, especially in elementary and middle school, I just couldn't wrap my head around how fantastic of a life experience this was. All I knew was that I was leaving my friends and having to start over again. And it was just this constant cycle of being the new kid. And I think because of my neurodiversity, which I've only just really started to learn about in the past year or two, it just all tracks. It all makes sense. I had ADHD, again, undiagnosed for the longest time. But part of that, and what I'm learning now, and some of the things I've learned through Shel Regini. She has a podcast called We Recover Loudly. And I was just on a panel with her and some other fantastic women all about neurodiversity and addiction in hospitality in New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail. And so that was the first time I was speaking about my own neurospicy experience in life. And one of the things about ADHD that I had no idea was even a thing is this thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where basically you think that either everyone's going to reject you or people are rejecting you through their facial expressions or things that they're saying. And it's, it's never about us. It's always about the other person in the sense that everyone is worried about their own selves. They're not so worried about you. And the same goes, for us, we're worried about our own selves and not so much about others. Not to say that we can't be compassionate or empathetic. That's not the thing, but no one's looking at you all the time. And the thing with RSD, they call it, is that you have this false sense that it's about you more than it is. And that is a part of ADHD that I didn't even know was a thing, but really combined with all of the years that I was actually bullied, I was actually torn down. It really kind of boiled up and up and up. And fast forward basically all of my adolescence until I got to college. And I had a couple of somewhat traumatic events before my senior year of high school, where I just fell into a clinical depression. All of this was the undercurrent for what was waiting for me in college. And I just happened to fall into a crowd of drinkers. Some people might be familiar. I don't know what it is in the rest of the world, but in the US, we have the Greek system, like fraternities and sororities. And they're usually a cesspool for a lot of alcohol and alcohol abuse. And probably a breeding ground for a lot of substance use and alcohol use disorders. Certainly in the early 2000s when I was in college, it was totally unchecked. And I wanted to reinvent myself. And I guess I did, but not in a way that I thought I was going to. So as they say, at first it was fun. Drinking was fun. And it made me feel like I was a part of things. Again, this was a long time ago, long before there was any kind of non-alcoholic beverage movement, long before there was any kind of new sobriety movement. And at 18 or 19, I wasn't looking for that either, So I just wanted to fit in. And at the time, what was fitting in meant drinking and keeping up with people with their alcohol intake. So I did that. And then it turned into fun with problems. So I was still having fun, but it wasn't getting too consequential. It wasn't terrible. Like maybe I lost a digital camera because at that time we didn't have a phone that had a camera. You had to bring a separate camera, or this brand new thing called a debit card. I'd lost a couple of those, but I wasn't blacking out yet. I didn't have, sexual situations that were unwanted or unwarranted. These things weren't happening yet. It was fun and with problems. And then by the end of college and the 2 years after graduation, which is the 2 years prior to my getting sober, I had a lot of problems and it stopped being fun. I got into a lot of situations that I would never have if I had my wits about me. I essentially thought I was going to be babysat by people who were also drunk, by the way. And I got into a lot of cars with drunk drivers. I didn't drive drunk, but I got into cars with them. And by the last 18 months of my drinking, I was hospitalized twice for alcohol poisoning. And I had only just turned 24 after the second one. So how do you condense 6 years into a few minutes? I just tried to do that. Of course, there were a lot of good times in there, and I didn't drink every day. I was a binge drinker. So, and a weekend binge drinker. So I could go weeks without it. But if I did drink, even if I imposed limits on myself, like this is going to be 2 drinks, I'm going to make good decisions tonight. Somehow I didn't stick to that. And because I was around other drinkers, I was just trying to keep up with them. And sobriety wasn't something that was even on my radar. Sober curiosity wasn't a term yet. It just wasn't something I was interested in either at, in my early to mid 20s. So after the second alcohol poisoning hospitalization, I again didn't want to think about getting sober. I didn't know what that even meant, but I also knew that I couldn't continue drinking safely. Of course, we know that technically speaking, no amount of alcohol is safe. It's a toxin, but there are a lot of things about sugar that are not good for us, and I still like dessert. So I think alcohol is more dangerous than sugar, but I'm not going to hold a total double standard and say that, that I don't consume any vices like caffeine. I like sugar, but suffice it to say, I couldn't fathom ever not drinking again, but I also couldn't fathom continuing to drink because if I did, I might not live much longer. Honestly, the most recent, which was 17 years ago, the last hospitalization, there were so many almosts, so many things that if they had gone just a little bit differently, I might not be here today. As a matter of fact, I think I would not have been here. So it really did feel kind of like this like shivery higher power moment, some sort of guardian angel. I'm not very spiritual. I'd like to get more spiritual, but it's not out of a religious perspective that I'm speaking. It's more of just, even if it's just coincidence upon coincidence, something felt different this time. Because like I said, I had been hospitalized before, and that really scared me. I was only 22. And how could I stop drinking forever? I was 22 and it was 2005. No one does that, right? Like that was my mentality. And again, there weren't these support systems in place. There wasn't this, um, I was 22 then. The 22-year-olds nowadays, they're not drinking as much. Maybe they're imbibing in cannabis beverages, but they're not drinking alcohol to the point that I was, certainly, or at least many of them aren't. So there weren't any alternatives that were attractive. It was either, and by the way, you're either normal because you can handle your alcohol, you can handle your liquor, or you're an alcoholic. Like, why do you have to opt out of something that is not good for you? You should be able to opt into it if that's what you want, but not.
Yeah.
There shouldn't have to be this need to opt out. So I stopped drinking for a little bit because that scared me. I didn't want that to happen again, obviously, but I didn't have a plan in place. I didn't really fathom a life where I wasn't drinking alcohol. And, before I knew it, maybe it was several months later, I just kind of picked up where I left off. And that led me to the last hospitalization, which was a huge wake-up call for me. And a huge sob story there, and lots of almost, but the moral of the story is that I came out relatively unscathed. I knew that I needed help. But I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it would be a forever thing. I didn't know what that actually looked like, but I knew that I was hurting and I needed professional help. So I called a substance abuse counselor. That's what they called them then. I'm not sure if they have maybe a different name now, but I called that number and they said, come in, meet with us. I took the test. Again, are you an alcoholic? There was no, are you a gray area drinker? Do you have a problem with alcohol? It was, are you an alcoholic? But again, that's what it was. And that's what it was. So I took the test, and per the test, I was an alcoholic, still totally in denial, by the way. Like, here I am meeting with a substance use counselor, knowing that I had an issue, but I was still in total denial about it. So she suggested, she couldn't force me. I mean, she suggested that I participate in this group intensive outpatient program through my health insurance provider, which was like totally not glamorous. It was not a glamorous treatment center on the beach. It was really like fluorescently lit. And I was around a lot of people who were court ordered to be there. That was the setting of my early days of sobriety. I had to be breathalyzed at every single session. And it was not, again, what I would call any kind of glamorous origin story of getting sober, but it stuck. It worked. I started to really feel things. I started to be actively aware of not having to wake up with a hangover and what that felt like. And again, did I say this is my life forever? No, but I was like, this is really good right now. I had to go to AA. I didn't want to be there. It was the only option that was presented to me. And it was the only way that I could graduate from this. Graduate, there was no ceremony, but essentially, in order to be checked off and given an aftercare plan, I had to go to 15 hours of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had to continue going in order to be deemed like safe to re-enter society, so to speak. By the way, I was still in society. I was working a job. I lied to them. I said there were family issues. I think my boss kind of saw through it, but he was so supportive. And I will always be thankful for that first boss. He's like, I'll do whatever you need, whatever you need. And in return, I just need you to be focused when you're here. So and that was my first job out of college. I mean, talk about a total wake up call. But I just started to really, like, again, feel things. I saw a therapist for the first time. I saw a psychiatrist for the first time. I got on an antidepressant. I've been on different iterations of said antidepressant since 2007. But it's more for my anxiety and to sort of address those situational depressions that I do have, seasonal depressions. And yeah, I mean, and that was really the start of it. And then so much has happened since, and my journey has taken me into so many different places and stages since. But that was the origin story. And I just liked the feeling of not being drunk anymore.
There are so many similarities in our stories. And
Really?
what I'm
Go on.
finding amazing is that you called it so young. Um, so yeah, very similar. In the UK, the legal drinking age is 18, and
Right.
we tend to start drinking around 16. You know, that tends to be the age
Yeah.
we start going to pubs with fake ID and everything else. So we were kind of drinking from 16, and that kind of be once or twice a week where we would go to a bar or a pub and have more than however many however many drinks, and it would be often you'd kind of get sick and you'd be experimenting and figuring that out. But by the time we were in university, 18 to 22, 18 to 21, it was heavy. It was heavy.
Yeah.
It was like 4 or 5 nights a week, and it was incredibly cheap back then as well.
Yeah.
And we would just the goal was to go out and drink. It was the activity was drinking.
And it was how fast could you get drunk too, by the way. It certainly wasn't drinking for the taste of it. It was drinking for the effect.
Exactly. And it was also how can we outdrink each other, who can, there
Yeah.
was that element of it. And I think there was also that kind of badge of being a woman and being able to drink heavily as well.
Yeah.
In the UK, we have what we call the ladette culture.
What's
Um,
that?
ladette. So it's like, so lads are kind of your guys, and being a ladette is basically being a girl who can hold her own against the guys,
I
and not just
see.
drinking it in other things. So, there was definitely that a lot of that going on. And it was also kind of around the time of like Friends, Sex and the City was really popular.
Mm.
Drinking, particularly when you look at shows like Sex and the City, was really glamorized.
Cosmos.
Yeah, right. And then so out of university straight into kind of the workforce, that continued, that behavior continued, whether that was with new colleagues, whether that was with like new friends that you'd make in the city. And we were still doing the same thing, going out
Yeah.
once or twice a week, and then heavy on kind of a Friday and Saturday night, the big binge drinking. And it just continued. And I definitely have put myself in situations that have been, looking back on it now, I've really had to do some work in my sobriety to look back on those, about how unsafe they were, how unsafe I was, things that happened that I just haven't dealt with,
Yeah.
or things that I don't want to even think about. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the fact that at 25, I know you had a couple of really bad moments, But I think even so, I wasn't necessarily hospitalized with alcohol poisoning, but I've definitely had some really horrible things happen, but I still didn't call it. I still
Yeah.
didn't think, okay, I've got a problem. And even now, I'm still like, I don't know if I did have a problem, because every single person around me was doing the same thing.
Well, for me, every single person was doing the same, but I kept getting myself into the worst situations and had the worst consequences. So something for me was, it just wasn't aligning. And I think if I didn't have these hospitalizations, I probably would have continued drinking well into my 20s, into my 30s. They were these wake up calls, and I think for me, the reason why it worked was because I had this, quote unquote rock bottom where I didn't think it could get any lower than that, and it possibly could have, but I didn't want to chance it because I really felt like I might not get the chance. I already had one hospitalization and then another one. So I was like, this is different. And I wanted to try something new. And it was really, really uncool. It was so uncool to be a sober 24-year-old. And by the way, I'm not claiming total victimhood here. I certainly, a lot of things happened to me that were not my fault. A lot of things happened to me that I had no control over. And I had a lot of toxic people around me. But I also, in retrospect and having done some of the work, I was probably a toxic person and a toxic friend to a lot of people. And I probably did some things, I know I did some things that I'm not proud of, the ones that I can remember anyway. There are a lot of things that I don't remember, and I'll never get those memories back. But from what I do remember, I'm not blameless in this. I'm not victimless, but I chose to do something about it for me. And again, I didn't make a promise that this is going to be the rest of my life, because that just sounded too scary. What is forever anyway? We only have, again, this is why, like, there are some isms that I learned in AA that just kind of stick with me today, even 17 years into my sobriety. And I have not, worked a program, quote unquote, in like over a decade. It hasn't been for me in well over a decade. But there are some things that still stick with me, and that's one day at a time. For me, that never really meant the drinking thing. It wasn't like, well, I'm not going to drink today, and then tomorrow's another today. It's a reminder that we only have the present. Like, we can regret the past all we want, and we can catastrophize the future all we want, but that's not going to change anything. We have today, and today they say, like, what is it, like, the present is a gift, something cheesy like that, but it's true. We have today, and it's a reminder for me to practice mindfulness, to practice being present in the moment, and to try to reduce. I'm human, so I do regret some things, and I do get scared about the future as well, but I try as hard as I can to stay in the moment, more, maybe more than I used to. For the first like 5 years of my sobriety, I did go in and out of AA. I stayed sober the whole time, but it was the only mutual support group that existed. And community, whatever your community is so important in maintaining whatever this healthy lifestyle looks like for you, whether it's mindful drinking, whether it's sober curiosity, whether it's, a dry month out of the year, whatever that is. We can't exist in a vacuum. We need people around us that understand and that want to be walking the journey with us in some way, shape, or form. So for me at the time, the only thing that existed was AA, and I didn't want to be there, but I went there because I wanted to not be alone.
Yeah.
And I will never regret the time that I spent there, because I did gain some really crucial early foundations in my recovery, and it really positioned me into what I now have, a life of long-term recovery and long-term sobriety. About like 4 or 5 years into it, it just didn't feel like it was for me anymore, and I didn't see anything else out there that existed that was attractive to me. I wanted to meet other people. I wanted to have a different kind of lifestyle. I wanted to still stay sober, but I didn't want to be in a church basement or lobby for the rest of my life. It just sounded too depressing. And it was like
Bad.
war
Yeah.
stories all the time and the same sort of chanted things. And I was like, there's got to be something else. And so it was really about 8 years into my sobriety. And I had a therapist. I was working out a lot. I had made better friendships, and solidified the relationships that were really important in my life. Still always doing the work. I'm not perfect today, by the way. But I felt like I was in this process of my own recovery. I was in recovery. And again, what AA had told me in the literature was that if you don't work the program, you're not considered in recovery, you're not truly sober, you're just like not drinking. And that also rubbed me the wrong way too. So I was like, there's got to be something else out there. I wasn't finding it. So I created something for me, and I was hoping that it would be a mechanism to connect me to other people around the world, because the internet can be a beautiful thing. It can also be a really scary, horrible thing. But it has been beautiful in so many ways, including the way that we're together right now, because we got
Yeah.
connected from Amanda at Naughty. Hi, Amanda. I started this blog called the Sobriety Collective. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I just knew that I liked the word collective and I liked bright colors, and I wanted to share my story more publicly. Everyone in my life, colleagues, friends, family, knew that I was sober. I was very out about it, and I was quite proud of my accomplishments and how I had turned my life around. But it was also a way for me to just um, limit the amount of awkward situations I was put into where alcohol was at a workplace event. If everyone knew I was sober, they just wouldn't offer me those drinks, because there were no other drinks there, you know? And so every like white elephant thing, I don't know if they have that equivalent for like a Christmas gift exchange for colleagues, but you would see so many wine bottles, so many liquor bottles. There'd be very little for me to choose from. But if I would, touch a gift, people would be like, no, Laura, go over there. Like that one. No, not that one. Because like everything was alcohol and they knew I was sober. Again, for me, it was a protective, like defense mechanism in a way. I just didn't want it to be a thing. So I was very loud about it. And I didn't have a lot of people in my life that understood where I had come from. And I wasn't interested in going back to AA. It was important in my early days, but I wanted something new. So again, I started this thing, didn't have many expectations of it. And then I ended up connecting with some really fantastic people. I started to kind of hone in on a niche, which was sharing stories of creatives, people who were artists, musicians, comedians, athletes, anyone who had a creative bone in their body, who chose to be, or who had gotten sober, or lived a booze-free lifestyle. And it was really flipping the trope that you have to be this tortured artist, this tortured musician, who needs drugs and alcohol to fuel their creativity. And so that was kind of the niche there. It was very much about sobriety and alternative recovery. That was where I was in that phase of my life. But I started to meet people who were sort of in this non-alcoholic adjacent, the non-alcoholic beverage adjacent world. So I met Chris Marshall of Sands Bar in 2017 when he had just launched his very first pop-up. It was a pop-up, and I featured his story on my blog. I met Ruby Warrington, who hadn't written Sober Curious yet, by the way. She had written a book called, I think it was called The Numinous. And it was all very sort of like, or no, that was the name of her blog. It was called like Material Girl in a Mystical World, or Mystical Girl in a Material World, something like that. It has a pink cover. And so I featured her. I met Tawny Lara, who at the time had a blog called Sobriety Party, but since then she's written a book called Dry Humping, and she has a beverage brand called Parentheses that she started with her husband. And one of the very first beverage brands that I remembered, besides Seedlip, I didn't get to interview Ben Branson for that blog, but I knew about him way back in the day, was this other brand that gave 50% of its profits, its proceeds, back to addiction recovery scholarships. It's called Clean Cause, and it's a sparkling yerba mate brand out of Austin, Texas. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, so I featured the founder on my blog. And fast forward a few years and some ADHD, I was ready for a new project. It was like, okay, this has been amazing. It served its purpose. I didn't completely abandon it, but I just wanted to do something new. And it was around that time. It was like 20 like early 2019 to mid 2019, I had this idea as I was starting to see more non-alcoholic beverages come into the market. Again, we're still pre-pandemic, but I was like, there's something here. I like the model that I had with the Sobriety Collective, where I was featuring people, featuring brands, featuring stories, having loads of resources. I had all sorts of links to podcasts and blogs and websites and books. And I wanted to see if I could replicate that model, but for what was then not even an industry, for this like new idea of this adult non-alcoholic beverage category, where at the time in 2019, again, I didn't know what was going on in the entire world, but with copious amounts of research, I could still only count like 10 brands. I could use both hands to capture everything. There were 3 booze-free bars: Redemption Bar in the UK, Listen Bar in New York, and Sands Bar in Austin, Texas. 2 of those were pop-ups, and there were no non-alcoholic bottle shops. But I was like, there's still something here. Let me just see if I can start something new and see what happens. And that is the start of Zero Proof Nation, which then took off once the pandemic started. Lots of things happened, and it kept growing and doesn't stop growing. It just keeps going. It's like the Energizer Bunny.
It's just been like an amazing resource for so many people, myself included.
Oh, thank you.
And just coming back to kind of the community element as well. You spoke a little bit before about really not being able to necessarily find your community, and therefore creating it, which I think is so cool. But I think there's just this misconception that the sobriety community is what you maybe see on TV and feel about kind of AA.
Yeah.
And that it is like you described, these kind of fluorescent lights, school hall or community hall, everyone's sitting around and it's like everyone's hit rock bottom and they're trying so hard to kind of claw their way out of it, and it's sad and it's hard, and I think so many people are like, well, that's their association to what sobriety is going to be like. If they quit alcohol, that's what it's going to be like. If they look for a community, that's what it's going to be like. And I think people then associate like giving up alcohol with this being really difficult, really hard. And for a lot of people, yes, it can be like that for people, especially people who are struggling with addiction. But for a lot of those kind of gray area drinkers, the gray zone drinkers, actually, it's not like that at all. And what's incredible is there are so many amazing communities that are popping up where it's a lot more vibrant and it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more focused on the positive aspects of what you're gaining from
rather than giving
up alcohol, rather than focusing on the trauma that you might have kind of received, the trauma that you might have been through and recovering from an addiction. Tell me a little bit more about the community with Zero Proof Nation.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's such a fantastic point, because a lot of people just assume that any sobriety community is a community of recovery. And I think I'm one of there are certainly a lot of beverage founders and bottle shop owners, bar owners, whatever, in the non-alcoholic space that have some sort of sobriety story or recovery story. But most of the people who are coming to these communities as part of them, or coming to the shops or coming to the bars and hanging out, they're not what they would call in recovery. They might be booze free or alcohol free by choice now, or they might be very rare alcohol drinkers. But there are so many statistics out there, it's hard to know what's actually current, but a lot of the research points to the majority of people who imbibe adult non-alcoholic beverages, again, because I think non-alcoholic for the longest time meant juices, sodas, milks, those kinds of things, waters. The adult non-alcoholic beverage drinker is statistically, according to certain sources, still drinking alcohol. Not a lot of it, but still drinking some alcohol. So the booze-free communities that exist now are so vibrant and colorful and childlike in sort of their wholesomeness and innocence, but also there's like, I mean, you can do anything. You can go axe throwing, you can go to a rave, like you can do anything and not drink alcohol. um, and I think, before the days of Sands Bar, Listen Bar, Redemption Bar, Sober Girls Society in the UK, Club Soda. I think there's some things in Australia like Hello Sunday Morning. Before those, I think it was somewhat accurate to sort of say most sobriety communities are kind of those quote unquote sort of depressing settings where there are fluorescent lights and bad coffee, because we just didn't have the third places, the social spaces to foster this different type of connecting, this different type of communing together, and certainly this different type of beverage, which for the longest time didn't exist. So it is a fair assumption for a lot of people to kind of come there to that point, that that's what they thought that sober communities would be like, because that's, unless you were like a marathoner or a triathlete or an Olympic athlete and you're just training and you're not drinking alcohol. I have to add that in because like we're all drinking. I'm drinking water right now. Like I'm drinking, I'm just not drinking alcohol. But unless you were part of those like micro communities of like elite athletes who are training for something, most of the people, if you heard the word sober, you thought AA, or you thought they had to hit a rock bottom. And I think that language is really important and it matters. And I will get to the original question about community, Zero Proof Nation, but you know, gray area drinking, even substance use disorder, these things didn't exist when I was coming up. And I am in recovery. I am in long-term sobriety, but I don't use those terms all the time on Zero Proof Nation because I've always envisioned this resource to be as inclusive as possible for anyone who doesn't want to drink alcohol for whatever length of time, even if it's just for the night or if it's for only parts of the night. I mean, it can be that short of a time. Yeah, if they want a non-alcoholic drink and a non-alcoholic drink and a non-alcoholic, like if they want a zebra stripe, they can. And here's the resources to sort of support that. I never really set out to create a community with Zero Proof Nation. It was always more of a resource for people because selfishly, I wanted a resource for myself. I was willing to do all of the research it took to put this together so that I wouldn't have to do hours and hours and months of research later to make sure I knew where the beverages were, where the bars were, where the bottle shops were. I just wanted it to be in one place selfishly for me. And then I mean, we're not that unique. Chances are if I wanted that, other people wanted that too. And I think through the common ground of wanting these types of beverage alternatives, wanting these types of social space alternatives, and retail, specialty retail that wasn't all about booze, through that and through Instagram, I have to say, for all the things I hate about Instagram, it has been the number one social media platform, and LinkedIn. God, I sound old. But LinkedIn and Instagram have been really, really incredible and just invaluable in terms of building community and building relationships with people all over the world. And I think it's Zero Proof Nation is really more of a resource that can be that thread between people in the community that I've met through Sober Instagram or Booze Free Instagram or Non-Alc Instagram. And yeah. LinkedIn for me has been so great because I've been meeting all of these fantastic entrepreneurs and people in the non-alcoholic industry. Whereas with Instagram, you get a lot of that, but you also get just regular people who want to find their own community, want to find their own squad. So I think it's been a lot of things, but I've always felt a bit of an outcast and a bit different. And I think some of that is because of some of my neurodiversity, and some of it might just be in my head. I have a lot of imposter syndrome. Who doesn't? But I've always just wanted to find people like me. That doesn't mean they have to be carbon copies of me. That's just boring. We want people who have differences. We want people who have different stories, but it's that, like, when I say like me, I just mean a shared experience. And the lowest common denominator is the shared human experience. So there's always something to relate to with another human being. But having that shared desire to drink less alcohol or not drink at all, and then having those beverages that exist now because so many people want alternatives. And so that continues to drive me. I still think that we're at the beginning. We've come a long way. God, we've come so long, like so far. But there's still so much work to be done, and it's exciting work. I mean, it doesn't always feel exciting day to day, and I'm not making a ton of money over here, by the way, but I'm working on it. I'm not driven by that, although I'd like to receive more abundance. I'm driven by the passion and by my love of this category and the people in it.
And that's what's just like blown me away, actually. Like, as somebody who's come into this because I stopped drinking and I really got into non-alcs, and I just couldn't understand, like, that there's you and there's a few others talking about it. And the conversation's definitely increased over the last 2 years. But when I first started to look at it, I was like, why are people not talking about this? Why are people not talking about, like, how incredible some of these products are? And I wouldn't be sober without them. Because my issue with alcohol wasn't the drink itself. Like, I didn't particularly want it anymore. I didn't like how it made me feel. I didn't crave it. I would often be forcing myself to drink because of the connection I wanted from that moment, and the connection that I wanted from that experience.
Oh my gosh, that's such an astute observation.
Yeah,
because that's what we associate alcohol with. Like, we associate it with communing with people, but if you really think about it, there is some stuff that's happening with brain chemistry there, but it's a beverage. You can have the sense of community with any other beverage, and maybe you don't have those inhibitions lowered with non-alcoholic beverages, but on the flip side, you have a much more authentic conversation and a much more present way of relating to each other. So maybe we're not getting a little loose with each other, but we're actually able to connect in a more, like, real way.
For sure. And I think, look, every single person in my life drinks. My parents love a drink, my family, my friends, my husband. And I think really deep down, I thought if I was going to cut out alcohol, people wouldn't want to hang out with me anymore. People wouldn't want to invite me. And it got so far as deep as, like, is my husband still going to love me? You know, we've shared, like, we drank on our wedding day, on our honeymoon, you know, we play a game of chess over a glass of wine, you know, there was that kind of deep down that I really started digging, you know, are people still going to love me? And what I found is that kind of when I gave up the alcohol, it was because I was training for, I kind of used that excuse of I'm training for a marathon and people left me alone then, you know, I'm training for something, so I didn't kind of get badgered so much. But what I found is in having a non-alcoholic wine, when all my friends were having a non-alcoholic wine, you know, having a non-alcoholic gin and tonic with my mum, having like a non-alcoholic beer with my dad, actually it was I'm not going to get into kind of whatever was going on with them and mirroring, because I know a lot of people who drink alcohol don't want to, you know, they don't want to face somebody who's not drinking. And there's a whole kind of different podcast in that topic. But I think just in the fact that you're mirroring them with a glass of wine, you're at ease, they're at ease, you're still having that moment. People forget that it's a non-alcoholic drink, and the connection was still there, and the good times were still there. And I was like, wow, the power of these products, like, it's not just a drink. It's not just a drink that often will leave you without a hangover and it's going to keep you feeling great and everything else. It's a connector. Like, it still allows me to be included and feel that deep connection to my friends and family. And I was like, people have to know about this. People have to know that this is an option, because I did not know that this was an option. It was going to make me feel this way.
I wonder what my life would have been like had I not quit so early on, and what it would be like to sort of discover non-alcoholic beverages, like the adult non-alc, in real time, so to speak. You said you've been sober for 2 years and sort of started discovering the products as they were really like starting to get good. It took a while. Took a while
Yeah.
for the products to get there, and I think they really have. And now, now it's like who's shinier than the other? Like everyone's trying to stand out the most, but the products are really good now. And I remember when there weren't any products, and then when there were a handful, and not always the best ones, and it just took time. And I do have to say that Seedlip really did help start so much. I mean, they were very early adopter. People didn't really know what to think of it or what to call it, because it's not a spirit, it's a botanical distillate, which then started its own category of botanical distillates. But it was beautifully bottled, beautifully packaged, and this gorgeous story. I mean, the marketing was like incredible, and it really made this non-alcoholic product, again, whatever people want to call it, it was still a premium product that was like, hey, this is non-alcoholic, but it is premium luxe and can stand with other premium luxe alcoholic products. And no one had done that before, really, that I can think of. I mean, sure, there have been some brands that have been out there for a long time, but I wouldn't necessarily call them premium. And I think that really helped other people see that there is something there. And now I can't even invite people to my apartment anymore because it's just too crowded with products. I'm not even joking. It's just ridiculous. It's a storage unit now. Like, I want my apartment back.
Just going to bed on a pile of crates.
I mean, you laugh, but that's almost what it is. I make sure my bed is clear every day, but like I have to move things. If I'm working out, true story, I did like an aerobics workout before we got on our call together, and I had to move products around so that I would have space to do my exercise, because that's just how bad it's gotten.
You need to open a bar.
I do.
I know. Let's actually talk about the products, because you've got so many, you've got to know which ones are good.
Yes.
So tell me about your favorites.
Oh, that's just a horrible question to ask me. It's like asking for your favorite child. Do I ask you who your favorite child is? So I do have some favorites now. I love a lot, and it also depends on the mood I'm in. So sometimes I want an A beer. I love beer. I love it. I never was into craft beer before because I just wanted the cheapest thing and the thing that would get me drunk fast. It wasn't about taste. It wasn't about quality. I did have a wine shipment, like a quarterly wine subscription that made me feel fancy, kind of bougie, like, oh, I'm an adult now. But I drank those so fast that I wouldn't have even tasted them, So now I get to drink like a connoisseur, and I don't have to have any hangovers. It's fantastic. So if I want an NA beer, some brands that I'm loving right now are Go Brewing. I love Mash Gang. As you know, they're from the UK, but they have really exploded in the US. I love Athletic still, and I think they've really helped start this like craft NA beer revolution. Just looking on my floor, by the way. I also really love this brand out of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where I went to college. And it's very sort of wholesome because I learned how to drink alcohol in college in Charlottesville. And now one of my favorite NA beer brands is out of that town. And it's called Uncool. It's called Uncool. And it's so good. They always have amazing, amazing flavors. And I just ordered a bunch. Like, Michelle, I have no business ordering more products. Like, I'm sent so much, and I still want to support the ecosystem. I want to support the industry. So I love those brands for beer. I really love they only have one SKU, but Golden Road has this non-alc mango cart. I wrote about it for the Modern Substitute, which is a fantastic newsletter. And if you haven't connected with Miles, you totally should. He's from the UK as well, even though he lives in the US. And I love that one. Now with wines, I will always, always love Naughty Sparkling Chardonnay. It's like the OG of sparkling champagnes. I just tried a bottle, not a whole bottle, but I could drink a whole bottle if I wanted. I tried a glass of sparkling rosé from this brand new company called Missing Thorn tonight. So that was new to me. I just got like basically every single product from this French company called Divin Zero. Haven't tried it yet, but it's a French NA wine. I love hop waters too. So I'm like really into this new brand called Hazards. They have a fantastic
So
passion fruit.
what's a hop water? I don't think
It
I've ever heard
is.
that term before.
So the first time I discovered hop water was through this brand called Hoplark, and they did this hopped tea where they brewed tea like craft beer. So with hops, they would have tea brewed with hops, and then they just kind of pivoted a lot into hopped water. So it's a sparkling water with different kinds of hop varieties and blends, so that it almost mimics it sort of mimics a beer, but it's not beer, it's just water. So it's a lot healthier. It's gluten-free. It's calorie-free. I mean, it's really just like sparkling water and hops. But this brand called Hazards has this fantastic passion fruit one that I love. I'm really into passion fruit everything. And I also love all the bitter. It's alcohol-free bitters. And I put them in everything, like literally everything from still water, sparkling water, beer, wine, spirits and cocktails, ice cream, oatmeal, yogurt, like everything.
Yeah.
They're so good. They're fantastic. And in terms of like spirits and sort of different categories, I really love two American brands called the Pathfinder and Tennyson. They're different. They're not like, it's not like they're trying to be a tequila alternative or a rum alternative. They're their own thing. Although speaking of the alternatives, I do really love some products that Ritual Zero Proof has. I love this brand out of Houston called Cut Above Zero Proof. I mean, I will and could go on and on and on. And I'll have to send you, I'm looking at my floor because I've got like so many products there. I just tried this Amaro in New Orleans called Namari, and it's got wormwood and gentian and orange and cardamom and cinnamon and all these like baking spices, and it is so good. And I can't wait to open my bottle. It's just winking at me. Yeah, and
I
then
need
like
to
if
get
you
half of
wanted,
these in Asia. They're like, I'm like, right, okay, goodness me, I need to do a trip to the US and stock
you know
up.
what? I need to see what's on. What was your friend has the bottle shop? Is it Free Spirit?
Free spirit, free
Yeah, I'll
spirit.
have to look and see what she has and tell you what some of my favorites are from there and what I would recommend.
Yeah.
But I think she's on my map, right? I think she is.
Yes, yeah, she
Okay.
is. You know what? I'll set up a little chat because you can, yeah, like just like let's get some recommendations on what she should be getting
Okay.
it for
Yeah,
sure.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And then like just because I'm all about sharing other resources and other ways for people to discover more in the non-alcoholic beverage world, there are some apps that I use and a couple of websites and newsletters that I love and read that help me really stay on top of things. Again, I didn't have any of those for the longest time. And so I just created a bunch of stuff, but I don't have to do it all now. That's the beautiful thing. There are other people who are part of this collective movement that are writing about it, talking about it, podcasting. So there are a couple of newsletters that are just a few that are fantastic. And I'll send you the links. So if you wanted to pop them in the show notes, you can. But the Modern Substitute, Mock the Toast, Dry Atlas, Positive Damage. Of course, Zero Proof Nation is fantastic, and Tawny's newsletter is really great too. She talks a lot about entrepreneurship and non-alcoholic and sobriety. And then yeah, in terms of the apps that I use, I love Buzzcut and Better Without. And I use them to complement the map, because the map is, it's for those alcohol free only establishments, whether they're booze free bars or non alcoholic bottle shops. But if I wanted to know if there's a place near me that has even Heineken Zero on the menu, um, chances are most places do now, but not all of them. I can go on Buzzcut and see if a place near me has that, or better, if they have other brands on the menu. So there's always new things that are coming out, and I always love to share. And on Zero Proof Nation, I do have like a blogs podcast. I'm going to add Upward Spiral now, by the way, a blogs podcast and apps section where people can just discover, like, I try to keep it non-alc adjacent or non-alc focused. But you talk enough about non-alcs on your show with other guests and yourself that I think we can pop that in there.
Thank you. I have to say, like, as someone new coming into this space and community, obviously I work in marketing. That's kind of my day job. But, coming into this new and just really passionate about it and wanting to learn and wanting to be part of it, like, I've been blown away by the generosity of everyone with their time and their network, and just people willing to talk to me. And it's just so beautiful. Like, honestly, I'm so grateful, and I'm really just enjoying learning from all the incredible people who are doing just brilliant work, and just feeling so inspired by everyone. I think it's awesome.
Well, we're so happy to have you here, Michelle. And you're doing a great job. I mean, I've seen some of your podcast clips with other guests. Your editor is fantastic, by the way. And yeah, I mean, I know our mutual friend Jill Seitz has been on your show, and I love Jill. And we were connected by Amanda, and we love Amanda. And it's just, that's really the beautiful thing about this industry as well, is that it's still small enough. It's getting so big, but it's still small enough that so many of us know each other, and we want to welcome new people in, and we want to connect with each other and connect everyone else with each other. And we say it all the time, but it's I'll say it again: a rising tide lifts all boats, lifts all ships. And there's always going to be big business in this industry, like big companies, but there's always going to be the entrepreneurs and the mom and pop shops. And we have to watch out for the little ones too, the little guys. Like, that's, I really feel strongly about supporting local, supporting women owned, supporting BIPOC owned. And I still love and support a lot of the, like, multi-million dollar companies too, by the way. But I think even more so now, it's important to show our love for small businesses in this industry.
For sure. There's so much craft that's going into it. And I'm the same. Look, there are some big brands that I love and they're great, but I love talking to the people who are just creating something really beautiful and trying to create really amazing quality products and have a great story and a great mission. And, there's so much of that here in this space that I really want to cover.
Yeah. And that's sort of the last thing that I will say, although those are my famous last words. That's really why I wanted to start Zero Proof Nation. The Instagram feed came first before any of the resources, like way before the map. And it was, let's feature non-alcoholic beverage founders and see what's their why. Like, why did they start a non-alcoholic beverage company when at the time they probably could have started an alcoholic beverage and made more money? There's usually an interesting backstory there. And this is long before there were these things called, meet the makers at the bottle shops, and all of the blogs that are on bottle shop websites, which I love and frequent. I wanted to get to know people's whys, and I've just learned so many just heard so many fantastic stories, and it's not just from the beverage founders, but it's for everyone in this industry. They have some sort of reason for being part of it and being loud about why it's so fantastic. So I still love it. I still learn every day as well.
And I love as well that so many of them are not sober.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating that so many of them are just still drink, not a lot, but they still drink. And,
they just want options for everyone. They want options for everyone, and they want options for themselves on the nights that they don't want to drink alcohol, which is great. I think, the more the merrier, honestly.
And it's that inclusivity, everybody's welcome. That I think is just brilliant.
Yes.
Laura, I feel like we could have 5 more conversations. There's so much that I wanted to talk to you about, including kind of the pink cloud phenomenon around sobriety.
I don't even remember what that was like, so maybe it's for the best. It's been a long time. They call me grandma around here, honestly. I don't remember.
You're like the matriarch of
yes, Queen Laura. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot, and maybe we'll have a part 2. And I'm very honored to be here. So thank you, like really from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for having me. And for anyone out there listening, I am so excited for you to learn more about non-alcs and more about the sobriety spectrum. And my DMs, my email, always open. Love to meet people.
Linked below.
Yeah, links in the comments. Speaking of link, I am also a LinkedIn nerd, so like if you're on LinkedIn, you can find me there. But yeah, it's just all about connection and about making sure that people feel like they're not alone. So I'm with you.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your story. I think it's just this powerful reminder that sobriety isn't a one size fits all as well. It's okay to find your own path and find your own way. And I think there are just to remember that there are some incredible resources out there. And if one doesn't feel quite right for you, then keep looking, keep digging, because there are some amazing communities. And there's a place for you here in this space, as well as, of course, like all of the amazing products that can help you kind of help with that bridge of cutting down on the alcohol or stopping completely.
You said it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. I would love to hear your thoughts, if there are any guests that we should get on. And of course, don't forget to check out Zero Proof Nation just for more information, inspiration on living a vibrant alcohol-free life. Everything, of course, is linked below. Thank you, Laura. I love talking to you. I will definitely try and make a trip over to the US in the next 6 months and would love to see you.
Oh, that would be amazing. I'd love to come to Singapore too, but
yes,
we'll have to talk about that. Yeah, thank you again, Michelle. It's been such an honor. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone. Bye.